Doing two college football player props here on PrizePicks for Saturday, September 16th. Before I get started, you guys check out the link in the description below. You can sign up for our premium Discord, $9.30 per month. It's where I post all the plays I'm making on PrizePicks. We also have some other premium cappers in there that post all of their plays. Again, go ahead and check out the link in the description below to sign up. Super positive community as well. Everyone in there just trying to help each other cash. But let's get into this video. Two college football player props for the Saturday slate here. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not gambling advice. Simply just plays I'm personally looking at making. Hopefully give you guys some insight and analysis to make your own player prop decisions. Again, no one's pressing submit on those parlays other than yourselves. But let's get right into this, you guys. Two college football player props, Saturday, September 16th. I'm going to do these nighttime slate games, or I guess the 7:30 to 4:30 p.m. start games. So again, if you're watching this video on Saturday, you should have some time to get these plays in if they haven't bumped. But yeah, let's get into it. Two plays, let's go. So the first one is going to be a running back play. It's going to be C.J. Donaldson, running back from West Virginia. I'm taking the over on his line of 54.5 against Pittsburgh. So taking a look at C.J. Donaldson, he's over in 3 of his last 3 games that he's played. Obviously, we're talking way back from October 29th of last season. Is when he played his last game last season. He got injured in that game, or I think maybe injured shortly afterwards, but he's played 2 games this season so far. Once against Penn State, where he rushed for 81 rushing yards, and then against Duquesne, who again was a complete blowout. Didn't really need to use him too much here. But we look at C.J. Donaldson, and he's a converted tight end that was now converted to a running back. And you can see here against a tough Penn State defensive line, and Penn State historically been a very elite defense in stopping the run. He had 18 carries for 81 yards, averaging 4.5 yards per carry. And then against Duquesne, he did have 13 carries, 5.56 yards on 4.3 yards per carry. But going back to last season, right? We're talking about his first collegiate season as a player, right? A first time really playing as a running back, right? He faced Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh, right? On the road at Pittsburgh. 7 carries, 125 yards, averaged 17.9 yards per carry in that game. He ended up actually, after that, becoming the starting running back and had 3 other games where he cleared 100 rushing yards, 11.2 yards per carry here against Towson, had 4.6 yards per carry on 23 carries for 106 yards against Virginia Tech, had 104 yards on 19 carries against TCU, which again was pretty elite run defense last year, and he averaged 5.5 yards per carry versus them. But again, why I like this play here is we take a look at Pittsburgh, so far this season, and we take a look more specifically at how they've kind of fared against running backs. Now, they've played Wofford 45-7 blowout. Not even going to look at that, but we just saw last week against Cincinnati, Pittsburgh lost 27-21, and we saw the running back for Cincinnati go for 20 carries, 153 yards, and 7.7 yards per carry. That's Corey Kiner here. He absolutely went parabolic here against Pittsburgh. 20 carries, like I said, for 153 yards. It's back-to-back games of 100 rushing yards here for Corey Kiner, so he should see a similar workload, or I think C.J. Donaldson should see a similar workload that Corey Kiner saw, and he put up 153. We need almost 100 rushing yards less than that here. I definitely see a situation where C.J. Donaldson should see 15 plus carries in this game. This matchup overall has a pretty obviously a close spread. Line is West Virginia is going to be 2.5 point favorites here with a 47 over. Again, this is a West Virginia home game as well, so I think it definitely should help C.J. Donaldson just in West Virginia looking to run the ball. Also, they don't have a super elite pass thrower at quarterback in Green. I think that's his name, Green. He's the quarterback for West Virginia. He's not JT Daniels. He's not a quarterback that can really move the ball down the field. So I definitely think they're going to rely here on C.J. Donaldson. And then we take a look at this article. Like, for example, this is on AP, and a healthy C.J. Donaldson could be West Virginia's best chance at reversing years of mediocrity, right? I mean, he's like 6'3", you guys. He's a massive power back. He's the type of running back that can rack up yards pretty easily. You can see here, one of the quote from James Franklin, was the head coach at Penn State. I've got a ton of respect for their running back. Talking about C.J. Donaldson, 235-pound Donaldson is still learning a position that he's thrown into in preseason camp last year due to a lack of depth. So again, he's just only getting better and better. We take a look over on Outlier, which again, you can get a 7-day free trial with Outlier. In my opinion, the best research tool in sports betting. Look at these odds. I mean, he's at minus 130 on DraftKings, or actually, let me refresh this. Let's just refresh this to see if any of these odds have moved here for CJ Donaldson. And again, this line could potentially bump here, but he's at minus 135 actually on DraftKings and minus 157 on Caesar Sportsbook to go over 54.5 rushing yards. Minus 157. We take a look at DraftKings, right? He is minus 135, as you can see here. Pittsburgh at West Virginia, CJ Donaldson over 54.5, minus 135. And if you look at like other running backs, as far as just like odds on the over, like he has probably the best odds. I mean, being at minus 135, there is a chance this could bump. But like, I mean, Gabe Ervin here at minus 125. I don't really see other running backs here at a minus 135 odds on their rush yards line. So all that combined here, I definitely think CJ Donaldson, if he can get 13 to 15 carries in this game, it should be an easy over. Going back to last season, like I just talked about, he went crazy against Purdue. Against Pitt. Seven carries, over 100 rushing yards just last season versus them. So again, CJ Donaldson over 54.5 rush yards is going to be the first play. Second play is going to be another college football prop. Obviously, it's going to be a fantasy score here, and we're looking at Garrett Shrader over 23.5. This is the quarterback for Syracuse. I like his over 23.5 fantasy score. So taking a look at Garrett Shrader, he's hit the over on this line in both games this season, both starts this season actually. Against Colgate, he had 29.3 fantasy, and against Western Michigan, he had 24.5. Even just looking at his last 5, or you can't look at his last 5. I don't know why PrizePicks took away the last 5 option here for fantasy scores for college football, but he has hit the over on both games this season. And dating back to last year, he had one of his best games of the year against Purdue in this same exact matchup. Obviously, last year it was at home, but last year against Purdue, he finished with 27.5 fantasy, 181 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, also had 83 yards on the ground on 17 carries. So absolutely just demolished them on the ground. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry as a runner. And again, Garrett Shrader, he is a running quarterback. Like, he's a dual threat quarterback. Look at going back to 2021, which was his first season with the Syracuse Orange. He had, look at the rushing touchdowns he had. He had 14 rushing touchdowns. Last year he had 9, and this year he already has 71 rushing yards for 1 touchdown. So again, 14 and 9 rushing touchdowns in his first 2 seasons as a starting quarterback with the Syracuse Orange. Definitely helps our chances with this fantasy score line of 23.5. We take a look at some odds for Garrett Shrader. Over on Outlier, you can see here he's minus 160, minus 154, minus 165 to go over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Also minus 130 on DraftKings to go over 246.5 pass yards. So again, those are 2 obviously odds that correlate to fantasy score. Most obviously every sports book doesn't have fantasy score odds, so you have to kind of take those odds that kind of correlate to it. But specifically, like I said, Garrett Shrader last year against Purdue put up monster numbers. Like I said, 27.5 over in both games this season. And in this matchup, should be a close one, right? Of all the games in the Big Ten this weekend, of all the teams playing in the Big Ten this weekend, this matchup has the second highest over-under at 56.5, but it has the closest spread of the highest over-under. So 56.5, you can see here. The only other higher over-under is going to be Wisconsin, Georgia Southern, but that's a 20-point spread, where Wisconsin's 20-point favorites in that one. So a 2.5-point spread with a 56.5 over/under should present a great kind of game flow and game environment for Garrett Shrader to hit the over on this. Now, Purdue, if we take a look here, is giving up, so through 2 games, has given up the most pass yards in the Big Ten of any team to opponents. Most pass yards, as well as the second overall most fantasy points, giving up 27.1 fantasy points through 2 games to the quarterback position. Now, it's a little bit skewed, but we take a look here. They've played Fresno State at home and lost 35-39, which was an absolute shootout. So hopefully if we can get a similar game to this, it should be an easy over for Garrett Shrader. In that game, Fresno State versus Purdue, Mikey Keene, quarterback, brand new quarterback here, making his debut for Fresno State, finished with 28.6 fantasy, and he had negative 10 rushing yards. He threw for 366 yards in the air, 4 touchdowns, and a negative 10 rushing yards. We know Garrett Shrader is not going to have negative 10 rushing yards. I mean, if we just take a look, he's at 40 and 31 so far this season. Even dating back to last season, he only had 1 game when he was in the negative, and had numerous games here over 50 rushing yards. So we're definitely going to see Garrett Shrader be able to run the ball. And like I said, Mikey Keene just went crazy, or in the first week, 28.6 fantasy. And then just last week in a super rainy game, if you guys were following this game got rained out for like 7 hours, and then they were able to finish. But Grant Wells still threw for 243 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. The backup quarterback also threw for another 32 yards here. So we know Purdue is definitely vulnerable. The only issue I have with this player, just I guess after doing my research, that something I don't like is that his number one target is going to potentially be out. He's questionable, right? He's questionable. He's supposed to play. People are saying he's going to play. Again, he's questionable. They probably just played it safe because they knew it was going to be a blowout. He exited in the first quarter of Syracuse's 48-7 win, and he only ended up with 1 catch for 10 yards. So, and you take a look at Garrett Schrader. He obviously performed well still without him, finished with 24.5 and only played 46 snaps. So it's not like this play is cooked if he doesn't play. I mean, if he does play, I love the over even more, but just keep an eye on this as well. Weather should not be a factor here. We're looking at hourly forecasts around that game time in West Lafayette. I guess this is where Purdue is, West Lafayette, Indiana. We're looking at a 7 p.m. start, so cloudy, no chance of rain, a little bit of wind here, but weather should not be in the factor at all. I like Garrett Schrader over 23.5 fantasy score in this game against Purdue. So here are the 2 plays here for this YouTube video. It's going to be CJ Donaldson, running back for West Virginia, over 54.5 rush yards. Garrett Schrader over 23.5 fantasy score. Let me know in the comments below, you guys. Drop a like. I do drop content like this every single day. Hit that subscribe button, and as always, let's cash.